friends! Welcome to Caterpillar Cross Stitch. I'm Kristen.
I'm Erin.
And we're from the Steel City Stitchers. And today we're here to do a tutorial video on easy cross stitch framing techniques. So we are by no means experts on how to frame. So this is a very beginner friendly video to just give you some tips and tricks on what we use for framing. And also answer some frequently asked questions that people will have about framing. So if you've been afraid to try framing your own cross stitch pieces, or it's just not in the budget to pay for professional framing, which, let's be honest, it's expensive, this will be a great video. So we hope that you enjoy.
Yeah, and if you like this video, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe, and you'll get more of that great cross stitch related content coming your way.
Absolutely, let's get started.
All right, first we're going to show you the pinning technique, which is probably the most popular technique to use when framing a cross stitch piece. We're also going to show you the lacing method, which is good for when you have a small piece of fabric like this one and you don't have a lot of excess fabric around the edges. So you don't have a lot to wrap and be able to pin securely. So we're going to be showing you how to do the lacing technique with this one.
Now, which one would you consider to be an easier technique?
So cross stitch is a little bit different because it's fabric and it stretches. So it's a little bit more difficult to frame than a picture. So really it's, for me, I really don't have an opinion one way or another. I think it's just personal preference.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
So let's talk about some
materials.
supplies. Yes.
Yeah, what do we need for this?
All right, so first you have your foam core. This is just purchased at a craft store, and it's not very thick. It's about 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch. But that foam core I also marked in the center, so I knew where the center of the board was. I also marked the piece that we're gonna frame in the center using a friction pen, which is really nice because you can just iron over it in the...
Oh, good, so you don't have to ruin your
way.
piece by putting a mark on it.
Correct.
Awesome.
Don't mistake this for a regular pen
Use
and
the
draw
right
all over
pen.
your piece. Then you also want to buy, I do have regular sized pins. These are way too long to use.
Because once you put it in the frame, they wouldn't go into the frame. They would bump the edges, right?
Also, you know, that's thick. You know, having to
that
stick a
is
pin
really
that
thick.
big. So I actually bought these little,
Here, show it up a little bit more.
yeah, those little teeny tiny pins.
See the difference in the size.
So these are going to be better for pinning a cross stitch piece. They're a little bit like more delicate, and they're not going to have to stick through the board as much. So you can get these on Amazon. This dish was thrifted.
I was gonna say, are they more delicate to go into the fancier dish?
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Fancy dish. This is more utilitarian.
I like it.
And then, so you have that. You have your pins. Obviously, you're going to have your foam core.
Your stitched piece.
Stitch piece. When we get to finishing the framing, you're going to want to have some type of crafter's roll of paper that this is going to go on the back of the frame. And then obviously, you're going to want to have a cross stitch frame. So this is the one that I've selected for this piece. It's an 8x10, so there's no matting in it. And I'm going to keep the glass in it. So I'll show you how to do that.
And those are always on sale at the craft store. So great thing to get.
Yeah, I think I got this one 50% off, so it ended up being $12 for this frame.
Awesome.
The craft paper is just a couple bucks for a roll. These pins are very inexpensive. I think it was like $3 or $4, and you get a ton of them. And then also, because you're not going to be putting the back of the frame onto the piece, you're going to be using the paper instead. You do need to have some type of hanger so that you can hang it on the wall. Very inexpensive to do this on your own.
Now, when you're considering the glass that you're using, do you consider glass width? Is there even an option in the craft store for changing the glass width? Because I don't believe there is, right?
No, so if you're purchasing just a frame off the shelf, it's going to be pretty standard. But what you could do if you needed to add a bit more space between the glass and your stitch piece, if you didn't want it sitting right on the glass, you could always cut little pieces of foam core into little squares and actually attach those in the corners, which would add a bit more depth.
Excellent. Yeah, good point. Now, if I'm using something like pearl cotton, I wouldn't need to do that. So if my stitched piece is thicker, then you don't need to worry about that quite as much.
Especially unless you wanted to have a little bit more space between the glass and your piece. You can also choose to frame without glass, which I have some pieces that have been done without glass as well, and I think they look great.
Excellent.
So really just personal preference on that. All right, so
Let's get this going.
let's get it started. All right, so we're going to show you how to find the center of your cross stitch piece. I think that's the thing that scares
I'm not
people.
great at that.
Now, what I did was I took a ruler and I just tried to find as close to the center. So I made a diagonal and then do the same thing on here. So I have the center on there. So it's really easy.
It's so much easier than repinning and pinning all the time.
Exactly.
Brilliant.
So once you get the center figured out, then it's just making sure that it's straight. So what you do is put the pin in to the cross stitch piece on your mark, and then you just simply stick it into the board and lay it out.
Awesome. That's so easy.
And then we really just want to eye it up. And you can also use a ruler to measure the edges to make sure that you're even. Or you can just start pinning and then just start stretching it and see kind of what looks best.
Awesome.
So that's how that works. All right, so pinning, once you flip it over and you found your center, is not, I mean, I don't think that there's really a specific technique to use. You just want to start placing pins into the piece just to hold it in place. That's really the importance of pinning.
And are you pulling while you're doing that?
I am. I'm just kind of pulling it tight, but you really want to make sure that, like, after you put in a couple pins, you flip it over and just make sure that you're still, you know, that your piece still looks centered.
Sure.
Because if you stretch it too much, especially if you have a lot of straight lines, you could alter those straight lines. This piece is nice to frame because there's no border. It can be a little bit more difficult, I guess, if you had a border. So you just place those pins, and then once we get it all pinned, we can pop it in the frame and put our paper over it.
Nice.
Just pinning away here.
So do you use any kind of a sticky board for the front of that?
If I had sticky board, I would use it because it would add a little bit of, I guess, security to the front. It would have a little bit more of a hold because this foam core, there's nothing to it. I've also seen people use a spray adhesive if they're not worried about permanence. And I guess that's the big thing for people is like, is this something that you want to permanently frame, or is there ever a chance that you want to take it out? Sticky board might be better for if you want to maybe take it out in the future.
Okay. And if you don't, what's another option then?
I think you could use you could use glue or like a spray adhesive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, is there a thickness that you like to use with your board?
No, I don't have a preference. Like I said, I mean, I'm not an expert at doing framing. So all I've ever really worked with, and I use this for other types of finishing too, like if I'm making an ornament. This is just foam core that you can buy from the craft store. So you don't really have to, I don't think there's any thickness difference with just standard foam core. Sticky board's not gonna be as thick.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Looks good.
And then, you know, cutting your board, which I guess we didn't talk about, is just going to depend on the size of your frame. So this frame that I purchased is an 8x10. So I cut my board to be an 8x10 so that this is nice and tight whenever I place it in here. If you're worried about tightness, you can always just trim it a little bit on either side.
Okay, so when you do the corners here, do you fold those in?
I don't. I just fold them over because I think if you were to try to miter the corners, which by that I mean, you know, folding in the corner at an angle and folding the fabric in, it may add too much bulk to the back. But you can do whatever you think looks best. Let's be honest, the back of a framed piece is never going to really look that great. But that's okay because you're going to cover it.
Right. That paper is going to help us at the end.
Right.
Awesome.
All right, so remember the back of your cross stitch, you know, the back of your frame piece is never going to look that great. But again, you have your pins to hold it and secure it. We kind of stretched it out. We flipped it over, and I think it looks great.
Yeah, I think it's ready.
I think it's ready to pop it in the frame.
Let's do it.
And again, this doesn't really matter how you're putting it in. One of the things that you may want to invest in though is some double-sided tape, which we do not have, in order to secure the paper, which we're going to show you in a second. Okay, so it's going to be tight whenever you go ahead and pop that piece in, but that's okay. Just make sure your pins are nice and tight, that you've pushed them all the way in. And this one fits so nice and snug, I was even able to fold those tabs back over as some added security to kind of hold that in place. So there's really no fear that this is going to pop out of the back.
It's not going anywhere.
This is not going anywhere. Plus, we're going to be attaching the craft paper to the back, which is going to add another layer of security to kind of hold that in. But you guys, look how great that looks.
That looks amazing. Ooh, that Steel City Stitchers Jody fabric looks so good.
It really does. I love how the gray and there's little pops of pink really bring out the fabric. So I think this was a really good choice for this frame.
I love it.
Very, very happy with this. So we're gonna go ahead and pop the paper on the back. And I'm actually gonna use a little bit of hot glue just to hold this down, but I already pre-cut this piece of paper. But you really wanna just measure it so that it's slightly larger than your 8x10 opening or whatever size frame that you use. So again, it doesn't have to be the whole way around if you don't want it to be. You can actually just cut a piece to fit. So let me go ahead and just glue these edges and then we'll show you what that looks like. All right, so now we have the paper, it's all hot glued. I just glued around the corners and stretched this out. And then up here at the top, I attached these little, you can buy these at the craft store also, but they just hammer right in. So you just attach these to the top.
Oh, that's convenient.
Hammer it in, and you are ready to hang it on the wall. It looks so good.
Yay.
So just again, here is a quick view of the framed piece. So very, very easy and simple. And so that's the pinning method. So let's jump in and just show you the basics of how to lace your piece. All right, so same technique that we used before. I found the middle of the cross stitch piece.
And this piece is also available for purchase through Sally, correct?
It is. This is a caterpillar piece. So, and it's so cute. Erin, you did such nice stitching on it.
I used sparkly floss.
Ooh. All right, so I found the middle of the foam core. I found the middle of the cross stitch piece. So now we're going to demonstrate how to use the lacing method, which is another technique you can use if you don't want to use pins. So I have just in my craft supplies, I have this heavy machine quilting and crafting thread. So you just want to make sure you're not using a thin embroidery floss. You want to use something that's probably polyester, something that has like a good stretch to it and is going to be durable. And you're going to need a lot. So you're going to want to unravel quite a bit. And the technique that I saw and that I've been looking at is when you flip your piece over. So let me just show this. You're actually going to wrap the fabric around, and then we're going to stitch vertically, and then we're going to stitch horizontally. So get all of your vertical stitches in and then all of your horizontal stitches. So let me get this centered and then I'll flip it over and then we'll show you how to do that.
So now it looks way more colorful than when we left it. So what have you added to the sides?
So I use these in sewing as well for when I'm making things on the sewing machine, but these are called Wonder Clips. You can buy these on Amazon. You get this whole amount of clips for a very inexpensive price. But what you're going to want to do is once you have your piece centered is you're going to want to clip the edges just to hold it in place so that you can start lacing it. And you want to have a fairly long piece of thread when you're doing this because the technique is going to be the back and forth motion with the thread. So you're going to do it again vertically, then you're going to do it horizontally. And all you want to do is just, I already made one pass.
Are you using one piece of thread or is that two?
I doubled it over just for added
Just for strength.
strength.
Yeah.
But here we go.
Gave it a little protein shake.
I bulked it up a bit. So then you just go ahead and just pull it. And you can see how it's starting to tighten on that side.
Nice.
I think this is a much more detailed process and time-consuming process than using the pinning technique. But again, it all just comes down to personal preference and what you like to do.
I guess materials on hand too, right? I mean, if you have this stuff.
Right. And this is nice, like I said before, when you have a piece that you don't have a lot of overlap. Like this would not have been easy to make tight with the pinning method because you wouldn't have had that extra fabric to fold over and like secure with the tape. So this way, with a very limited amount, you can make it really tight.
Very valid point.
So you can control that.
Cool. So then when you're finishing this, is it going to finish any different than the other way, that the pinning method?
Nope. So
when
you're
putting it in
going.
the frame?
Nope. So you're going to finish it the exact same way. So once you get this all laced, you're just going to place it in the frame, put your paper over the back, and that's it. So this is the lacing technique, which again, like guys, we're not experts on how to do this, but I think you get a pretty good idea of how this method works, and you can start to see how it's really pulling tight on that fabric. Tight. And then of course, once you start lacing it, you can pop those clips off.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say that was way easier than I had anticipated. So I will definitely be trying this. I've never tried it myself, so I'm excited.
Yeah, we hope that you enjoyed it. So thanks for watching. We hope that you picked up some good techniques and tips to put into your own arsenal and that you give it a try. What's the worst that can happen? You can always take it out and try something else.
There you go. Make sure you look below. There's a link there to sign up for Sally's newsletter, and you get 5 free patterns coming your way just for signing up. Yeah. So what do you have to lose? Absolutely. So make sure you check that out. And thanks so much for watching. We so appreciate it.
This was fun.
Have a good one. Bye,
guys.
friends.